They were called useless. They were laughed at for wearing the same clothes every winter. Neighbors whispered, "They'll die poor." But what no one knew was that one small decision, one silent sacrifice, would one day turn this forgotten old couple into the wealthiest family in their town. This is the story of Eleanor and Samuel. Please like, subscribe, and share for more real stories of like this. Eleanor age was 67, Samuel age was 72. They lived in a tiny wooden house at the edge of town. The roof leaked when it rained. The paint had peeled years ago. The heater barely worked. Every morning before sunrise, Samuel walked 2 miles to a construction site, not as a contractor, not as a supervisor, but as a cleaner. At his age, his hands trembled from arthritis, his back curved like a question mark. Life never answered. And Eleanor, she baked bread in an old oven and sold it in the market. Sometimes she sold all of it. Sometimes she came home with every loaf unsold, and still they smiled. But smiles don't pay bills. One winter evening, Samuel slipped on the icy road while carrying leftover wood scraps from work. People watched, no one helped. One man laughed and said, "Old man, why don't you just give up?" That night, Eleanor cleaned his bleeding hands. She didn't cry in front of him, but when he fell asleep, her tears soaked the pillow. She whispered, "God, we never asked for luxury, just dignity." What no one knew was that for 40 years, Eleanor had been saving coins, not dollars, coins, every tip, every spare change, every penny found in laundry pockets. She kept them in an old tin box under the bed. Samuel didn't even know how much was inside. One day, she made a decision that scared her. Instead of saving more, she invested it, all of it, in a small, struggling bakery that a young widow in town was about to close. Everyone said she was crazy. Poor people shouldn't take risks, they told her. But Eleanor believed something different. Poor people can't afford not to take smart risks. The first year was brutal. They almost lost everything. Suppliers demanded payments. Sales were slow. Competitors mocked them. Samuel worked double shifts. Eleanor woke at 3 a.m. every day to bake herself. Then, one morning, a food blogger from the city visited the town. She tasted Eleanor's cinnamon bread. She filmed it, she posted it, and overnight, everything exploded. Orders poured in from across the state. Lines formed outside the bakery. Their old town oven became famous for something simple. Bread made with patience, bread made with love, bread made with struggle. Within 5 years, they owned 3 bakeries. Within 10, they supplied major supermarkets that didn't become billionaires, but they became something better. Secure, respected, free. The same neighbors who once whispered, now said, "We always knew they were special." Samuel would just smile quietly, because he remembered the laughter. On their 50th wedding anniversary, Samuel gave Eleanor a small wrapped box. Inside was the same old tin container she once used for coins, but this time, it was filled with gold coins. He said, "You turned pennies into a future." She replied, "No, we turned pain into purpose." Years later, when reporters asked them the secret of their success, they shocked everyone. They said, "We never wanted to be rich. We just refused to stay broken. And here's the part that will stay with you." They quietly funded education for 37 children in their town, without putting their name on a single building, because true wealth isn't money, it's impact. Poverty is temporary, if persistence isn't. Age is not a limitation. Quitting is. Small savings can build big futures. Respect yourself before the world respects you. And most importantly, sometimes the world laughs before it applauds. If this story touched your heart, if you believe struggle builds strength, if you respect people who rise quietly, then like this video, share it with someone who needs hope today, and subscribe for more powerful life stories, because the next story might change your life. Hook. First 20 seconds. They had money now. They had respect. They had security. But just when life finally felt peaceful, a single phone call at 2:17 a.m. shattered everything. Because sometimes, the real test doesn't come when you're poor, it comes when you finally have something to lose. The phone rang again. Samuel woke up first. His hands, still rough despite their success, trembled as he answered. It was the hospital. That Eleanor had collapsed in the bakery earlier that evening, but insisted she was just tired. She didn't want to worry anyone. Now doctors were saying words Samuel couldn't process. Heart condition, stress-related, immediate surgery. The same woman who once survived on bread crusts was now fighting for her life in a private hospital room, and Samuel whispered to himself, "What's the point of wealth if I lose her?" The surgery was expensive, not because they couldn't afford it, but because Samuel realized something terrifying. Money can buy treatment, but it cannot guarantee tomorrow. He sat beside her hospital bed, holding her fragile hand. For the first time in decades, the strong, silent man cried openly. He wasn't afraid of being poor again. He was afraid of being alone. Before surgery, Eleanor looked at him and smiled softly. "Sam, promise me something." He shook his head. "Don't talk like that." She squeezed his hand. "If I don't wake up, don't close the bakeries." They were never about bread. They were about proving that pain doesn't get the final word. Samuel couldn't speak, because deep down, he knew she was the real strength behind everything. The surgery lasted 3 hours. 3 hours that felt like 30 years. Samuel walked the hospital hallway over and over. Memories flooded him. The leaking roof, the frozen winters, the humiliation, the coins in a tin box. And he realized something powerful. They weren't wealthy because of money. They were wealthy because they never gave up on each other. At 6:43 a.m., the surgeon walked out. Samuel stopped breathing. "She's stable." That was it. 2 words. Stable. Samuel collapsed into a chair, laughing and crying at the same time. Because after surviving poverty, after surviving humiliation, they had just survived something even greater, the fear of losing love. Eleanor recovered slowly, and during those months, something changed. They started spending less time expanding the business and more time mentoring young couples. They told them, build each other before you build your bank account. They funded small businesses for elderly workers who had been laid off. They created jobs specifically for people over 60 because they remembered what it felt like to be overlooked. One evening, sitting outside their renovated home, Eleanor looked at Samuel and said, "You know what's funny? We prayed for success, but what we really needed was struggle." Samuel nodded. Because without struggle, they would never have known their own strength. Wealth without health means nothing. Success without love feels empty. Struggle is not punishment, it's preparation. The greatest investment you'll ever make is in the person beside you. And here's the truth most people ignore. You don't become strong when life gets easy. You become strong when quitting feels easier than continuing, and you choose to continue anyway. If this story moved you, if you believe love is stronger than money, if you respect couples who fight life together, comment, "Real wealth is love," and subscribe for part 3, because their biggest challenge was still coming. Cinematic script. Train hits a broken rooftop. Water drips into a metal bowl. An old man sits quietly at a wooden table, staring at unpaid bills. His hands shake. His wife watches him from the doorway. They were invisible, too old to matter, too poor to be respected, too forgotten to be noticed. But what the world didn't see was that inside this fragile house lived a love stronger than poverty. This is the story of Eleanor and Samuel, that endowed the people the world laughed at, became the people the world admired. Samuel, 72 years old, still working as a cleaning laborer at a construction site. Young workers mocked him. "Grandpa, shouldn't you be retired?" He smiled politely. "Because pride doesn't feed you." Eleanor, 67, baking bread every morning in a cracked oven, selling it at the market. Some days she sold out, some days she returned home carrying everything back. One night, Samuel placed $14 on the table. That was their entire income for the day. He whispered, "I'm sorry." Eleanor replied softly, "We're still together. That's enough." But when he fell asleep, she opened a small tin box hidden under the bed. Coins. Hundreds of coins, saved over 40 years. Every spare change. Every sacrifice. She had been quietly building something, even when hope seemed impossible. Winter. Icy road. Samuel slips while carrying scrap wood. People walk past him. One man laughs. "You're too old. Just stop trying." The words cut deeper than the fall. That night, Eleanor cleaned the blood from his hands. He tried to hide his tears. She tried to hide hers. That was the night she made a decision. Not out of greed, out of dignity. Small bakery in town was closing. Owned by a young widow. Debt everywhere. No customers. Everyone said, "It's a failure." Eleanor saw something different. She saw possibility. She emptied the tin box. Every coin, every memory. Every safety net. Samuel was shocked. "What if we lose everything?" She looked at him and said, We already have nothing, but we still have courage. They bought the bakery. The first year was brutal. No customers, suppliers, demanding payment, bills stacking up. Samuel worked double shifts. Eleanor baked at 3 a.m. Exhausted.